If you're like most people, the first time you set up your website, you have no idea what you're doing, and that makes you a target. Big platforms like Wix, GoDaddy, and Squarespace, they know that you have no idea what a DNS or an SSL or a hosting plan is, and they leverage this confusion to lock you into big, expensive bundles that are a pain in the butt to escape from. I've worked with many businesses who have learned this the hard way, paying way more than they needed for subpar systems that slowed them down and ultimately cost them sales. I've also fallen into traps like this myself, which I'll go into later. So today in this video, I'm going to break down the key things that you need to know in plain English before you set your website up so that you can avoid falling into traps which ultimately cost you time, money, and centimeters off your hairline. At the end of this video, you'll understand 1, what a DNS is and the roles that it performs in your business. Spoiler alert, it does way more than just your website. 2, we'll get into the 3 biggest traps that I see businesses fall into when they're first configuring their website so that you can spot the red flags before they become problems. And then 3, I'll show you what a scalable configuration looks like for your DNS site builder and email so that you can start to get this all right today. Let's go. All right, today we're going to start with a really common scenario. You've built a really pretty site, but when your customers type in yourbusiness.com, it takes them nowhere. This happens because computers don't rely on human readable domain names like yourbusiness.com. They rely on IP addresses. Conversely though, you can't ask your customers to type in 31.431 theta 7 every time they want to come and visit your website. This is where your domain name system comes into play. These are your Cloudflares, your GoDaddies, your SiteGrounds, your Namecheaps, etc. At a really basic level, your DNS is kind of like an online real estate agent and traffic conductor all boiled into one. It's a platform where you buy and renew your domain, aka your .com, and it's also an always-on system which is constantly directing traffic to and from your website, including messages and data. Now, there's a little bit more going on behind the scenes here, but let's not get stuck in the weeds. The next most important thing you need to understand about your DNS is that it's also responsible for handling your email traffic. It really doesn't matter if you prefer Google Workspace or Microsoft 365, Proton Mail or Namecheap. You can configure a completely customized email address with any of those email services, and you can use any DNS host you prefer to set that up. They usually make it really easy. The third thing you need to know about your DNS is it provides a base foundation for a bunch of other really important services that you will need to run your business. Things like your payment services, your booking services, newsletters, client portals, the list goes on. Basically, every time you see a subdomain on a website, that is a solution that's been configured inside your DNS. Long story short, as you can see, you build lots of things on top of your DNS. Therefore, you want to avoid ever needing to migrate your DNS if you can. Migrating to another DNS host can be a really time-intensive, potentially painful and risky process. If it's handled poorly, you risk losing your hard-earned website SEO ranking. You might experience email outages. You might lose a bunch of emails entirely, damage your sender reputation. The list just goes on and on and on. It's a huge, risky pain in the butt. It can also be expensive, depending on how big your website is. A typical web designer might charge hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars to do it because it is risky. All right, so at this point, you get it. Your DNS, very important, very cumbersome to change, and also quite risky. But now you're probably asking, why is this guy beating that dead horse so hard? Well, glad you asked, because that leads us to trap number 1, the DNS lock-in trap. For those of you who were paying super close attention before, you may have noticed that I included popular site builders Wix and Squarespace in the DNS host list. This is because while most site builders don't offer DNS hosting, you guessed it, Wix and Squarespace, and some others do. This means that when you're onboarding, they're going to ask you if you want to buy your .com immediately. And I'll admit, it's a super tempting offer. It means that you just need one platform for all of your website needs. The convenience does come at a cost though. If you ever want to switch website builders later on, as many do, you've now got a migration project on your hands. And it's a pretty easy trap to avoid. When you're onboarding, just ignore the prompts to buy the .com. Instead, go to a DNS host like GoDaddy or Cloudflare or SiteGround or Namecheap and buy it there, then spend an extra 5 minutes configuring them. If you've already bought your domain through Wix, Squarespace, or Cargo, try and transfer it if you can before you set up your emails or any of the other services. Your future self and your future developer will thank you. All right, sweet. Now, before we move on to the other traps, let's unpack this a little bit. What Wix and Squarespace are doing here is what's popularly called setting up an economic moat. Now, this is a term popularized by Warren Buffett. It's a strategy that companies use to protect themselves by making it really difficult and costly costly for their customers to leave. The classic example is Apple. If you own a MacBook and an iPad and an iPhone, then switching to the Google ecosystem isn't just expensive, it's a massive pain in the ass. You'd have to migrate all of your photos, you have to shut down old systems, you have to reconfigure all of your apps, probably have to set up new accounts. Photos alone, forget about it. All right, sweet. So that was our first major economic moat trap that you need to watch out for. Let's take a quick look at GoDaddy. Unlike Wix and Squarespace, which started as site builders and later added DNS hosting, GoDaddy took the opposite route. They began as a DNS host first, and then they tacked on extra products later. While GoDaddy's DNS hosting services are fantastic, whenever you buy a .com on GoDaddy, you really want to be careful with the convenient add-ons that they offer you when you're onboarding. This leads us to trap number 2, which I like to call the GoDaddy 365 squeeze trap. As the old saying goes, if someone's trying to sell you a golden goose, you better check that it's not laying IOUs. Now, for the sake of full disclosure, this is a trap that I personally fell into when I was first getting set up as a freelancer and didn't really know what I was doing. GoDaddy have entered into a partnership with Microsoft to essentially white label the Microsoft 365 solution. Major differences that I encountered, which kind of me to tears, are: 1, every time you want to sign into Microsoft, you need to sign in via GoDaddy first. That is a real pain in the butt. 2, you miss out on tons of integrations that work really well with Microsoft 365. 3, because it's GoDaddy 365, you have no guarantees that they're not going to jack up the prices after the initial term. And 4, you just miss out on a bunch of features that you'd get with Microsoft 365. So you dive into Quora or you dive into Reddit, and after about 20 minutes, there actually is no solution to that problem. All you found is about 20 to 40 other really pissed off people on Reddit who are also in your same boat. And now they're just talking about how to defederate from GoDaddy 365 down to Microsoft 365. So yeah, there's a lot of really angry people on Reddit who really don't like GoDaddy 365. And I'm one of them. To be clear, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't use Microsoft 365. If that's the tool that you think is right for your business, go for gold. All I'm suggesting is that you should consider buying it directly from Microsoft's website first, maybe with a personal email address. And once you're there, they'll give you really clear, quick instructions on how to configure it. All right, moving on. The third major economic trap, which we'll be covering, is
the free site cost creep trap.
At its core, this trap is simply signing up to use WordPress or any other free site builder comparable to WordPress without properly understanding the hidden costs and additional complexity that you're taking on. This often might come from your DNS host like GoDaddy or even a developer like me. Yeah, you heard that right. Some developers love WordPress. Why? Because with WordPress, it just breaks all the time, and unless you're prepared to take on the management of all of the moving parts that you're seeing on screen right now, you're locked into paying a developer a monthly support and maintenance fee. Now, there's too much to unpack here, so I've made another video specifically on this trap, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. Anyway, sweet, that's all the traps. Now that you know what to avoid, let's look at what a good setup actually looks like. All right, over the next few minutes, we're going to cover off 1, which DNS host is right for your business, 2, which email service providers should you consider, and then 3, what are your options as far as modern site builders. All right, let's kick off with DNS hosts. My personal preference is Cloudflare because, in my experience, the domains are cheaper than everywhere else and you get really fantastic features. Namecheap is also really popular for those reasons. For both of them, though, you get pretty poor customer support. At least you do where I am here in Australia and also on the free plan. Maybe it would be different if I was in America and paying for business hosting. If you're after better customer support, GoDaddy offers phone support. Just be prepared to pay a little bit more for, your domain renewals. In my experience, though, SiteGround's customer support is actually better, albeit delivered entirely via their online portal. However, I find that even more useful because often they can copy and paste codes and send them straight to you that you can just copy and paste into your DNS. Shouts out to the SiteGround customer support team. You guys are the bomb. All right, onto email services. Now, for this, you'll need to do your own research and map out what a monthly subscription to these tools actually gets you and compare them to your business needs. If you need a framework to do that, I'd recommend the Moscow method: must have, should have, could have, won't have. And you just compare the must haves and should haves against the features being offered by these different tools. Another key consideration when you're setting up your email address is that not all integrations are built the same. So if you're planning to use a CRM or an ERP system or another major tool like that, look into reviews from people coming from different email ecosystems. For example, I use Notion, and Notion doesn't integrate into Microsoft. Notion integrates really well with Gmail, so I can configure automations natively from inside Notion. So we've got ProtonMail, which is a relatively unknown competitor in this space, but they offer a really sweet business suite of tools. Comes with a VPN, cloud storage, a password manager. It's all just built into their business suite. I use ProtonMail, can confirm it's really awesome. You can subscribe to ProtonMail for like $5 a month and get a custom email address. Next up, we've got Namecheap. Namecheap is for the people that just need bare bones, super basic email and no other tool. It costs something like $12 a year or 20 to 25 Aussie dollars. Just be prepared to get your hands dirty. You're going to need to configure your own IMAP and SMTP settings inside an email platform like Outlook or Thunderbird or something. And then finally, down to the cheapest end of this spectrum, there are free email forwarding services like Improv MX. They allow you to set up email aliases so you can advertise any custom email you want, name@yourbusiness.com. But every time someone's email inbox, it actually goes to your personal Gmail or your personal Outlook or your personal Hotmail. Just be aware though that while it can receive mail as the custom email address, when you send mail outwards, that will come from your personal email address. If you want to change that, you'll need to configure SMTP, which is usually something you have to pay. At which point you probably just go to the Namecheap. All right, next up, we've got site builders. Listen, there's way too much to unpack here, and I'll be making another more comprehensive video about this. But at the highest level, Shopify and Webflow are the most complex to build and manage. Framer, Wix, and Cargo Collective have a little bit more of a learning curve. And then finally, TypeDream and Squarespace are very accessible site builders, but you're probably going to run into some limitations if and when you're ready to scale. Anyway, I reckon that's the final nail in today's to-do list. I hope it's clarified a few things for a few of you and helped someone avoid a great deal of pain. If you like this, give us a like because it really does help. If you want more practical guides like this, don't forget to hit subscribe. And also, if there's a concept or another major trap you think that I've missed in this, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you've got to say. More videos coming soon. Until then, take it easy and catch you in the next one.